get a bit of energy in the room. So if I could ask you to, if you're sat down, if you want to stand up, I'm standing up. If you would like to do that as well, please do. If you have to stay sat down, that's absolutely fine. We're just going to get a bit of energy in the room. So rolling those shoulders backwards. Nice. This should be easy at this point. No real stress going through the body. Just rolling shoulders backwards. I'm just going to move my neck to the left and right, nice and easy. It's so easy to spend our whole day sitting down at a desk in this kind of position. So we're going to do a few more backward shoulder circles. This time a little bit quicker. If I'm standing up, I'm actually moving my feet up and down right now. I'm marching on the spot. Beautiful, nice. And now I'm going to lift those arms above my head. So I'm going to bring them down, up, down, up. I'm going to breathe out, in. Nice, for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And we've got 10 seconds free freestyling. So we're going to bring arms across the body if you want to. You can bend down if you want to. You can stand up straight, arms above head for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, beautiful. Thank you very much, guys. Chris, I wondered if you were going to keep going then. Okay, it's nice to get a bit of energy in the room. It gets a bit of oxygen flowing around the body, and we're in a nice mode to listen, learn, and basically have fun. Because by the way, guys, at halfway or perhaps earlier, I am going to ask you what questions you have for the panel. We've had some come in already. So be ready. This is not a sit back, relax, tune out session. This is a get involved, have fun, engaging session. We talk a lot about engagement. I think to boost engagement, employee wellbeing, you need to be engaging. So that's what we're going to try and do today. And without further ado, we've got some amazing panelists for you. I'm just going to quickly share my screen as we introduce everyone. And I think on the topic of leadership and culture, it makes sense, John, if you'd be happy enough kicking things off. John Garland is a leadership coach, currently talking through a program with me, but a lot more experience than just talking to myself. We'll come on to that in a second. We got Kelly Hartman, who's Chief People Officer at Flywire, again, driving the wellbeing initiatives there, global business in tech. And then we got Harriet Jones, who's driving the wellbeing side at Bristow's law firm. And we've been working with closely over the last few months to do virtual sessions there. So without further ado, John, how are you feeling? How are you doing? We love to start with this oxygen mask analogy. So putting yourself first before you can look after other people. So John, if you wouldn't mind, how are you today?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Good to see everybody. I am feeling really energized. I've been looking forward to this. It's a subject so close to my heart that anything that we can do to actually move the agenda forward, I'm all more than happy to help out with. And it's been great working with Chris over the last 3 months as well. So really focused, really energized, buzzing.
Beautiful, thanks, John. Kelly, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. I did my boxing session this morning, and then I went for a walk and did all my one-on-one meetings in Hampstead Heath for those that are in London. So yeah, and last night was great because we had the London group for, we took them out for dinner. So it was just nice to see people face to face. So feeling very good at the moment, but you know, it has been, if I'm really honest, it's been a struggle because as Chris said before, I travel 80% of my time. So it's been a big change and all my family are in Australia. So I kind of miss them a lot and I have no freedom just to go and see them when I want. And it was my parents' 50th wedding anniversary on Sunday, and but I used Kahoot and Zoom and personal stuff, and they just said it was the most beautiful celebration ever. So I felt connected even if I wasn't there in person.
Love it, thank you. We'll come back to that in a second actually. Kelly, Harriet, how about yourself? How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm very nervous if I'm honest with you all, but I'm really excited, and yeah, I've been really positive and feeling really good at the moment. Again, in all honesty, at the beginning of lockdown, I was really struggling. I felt really low. I couldn't sleep and I just felt terrible for a little while there. But truly I'm moving out the other side of it now and feeling quite positive and seeing all the positives that are coming out of this situation. So I'm really glad you asked me to talk because I've got lots to talk about.
Well, I'm really glad you joined. Thanks a bunch. So I suppose in the spirit of of picking up and starting from the start. It'd be useful to understand a little bit about the kind of changes that have gone on for each of you guys in the last 3 months or so. In the last session, we spoke about the change curve. So this idea that at the beginning we're in denial, maybe anger comes up at points, and then potentially now in general, we're moving through towards a more acceptance and make it happen type mode. So if you wouldn't mind, Harriet, just to continue the thread, maybe thinking about your experiences with Bristow's, what's been going on the last few months and where are you today?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed a lot over the last few months, definitely through those stages that you just mentioned. We've had a lot of things not happen as planned. We've been recruiting trainees virtually over the summer. We've had to move we were supposed to have our wellbeing launch and wellbeing month and all happen in the office, which is now moved sort of virtually, sort of waiting till we're back together again. So it really has been a stage of change and adjustment for everyone, I think. I think right now we're kind of taking the most of August because it's quite a quiet month for us. We've got lots of staff enjoying some annual leave, which is great, but it's definitely meant that August right now is sort of a period of reflection, and we're looking back on what we've done over the last few months. You know, we've been taking pulse surveys, we've been identifying what we have done, and now we're in that planning and sort of busy squirreling mode, and what can we do next, and how do we move this forward, and how do we build on the momentum that we've started over the summer.
Yeah, thank you. John, I can't hear the words reflection without thinking about you, because what John's helped me, by the way, get in the habit of reflecting at the end of each day. So John, how about yourself? What in terms of leadership and what you're seeing at companies, what are the themes that have come out for you in the last few months?
Yeah, certainly. It's certainly my company and the companies I'm working with. It's completely throwing out the rule book and looking at, well, how do we move forward? And it's interesting. We kept on hearing that phrase, the new normal. Well, we've dropped the new now, haven't we? It's now into normal, except there's no playbook for it. And I think that's the biggest change that people were experiencing. It's you don't know what's about to happen. You don't know how it's going to play out. And we're going to come on to this with leadership. For me, it's about creating some form of certainty for everybody in an uncertain world. And even if you don't know what the answers are, you can still be certain with certain things about how you're going to work with people. So for at Grow and Vision, virtually all of our work was face-to-face, whether it be one-to-one coaching or group coaching or training sessions or facilitating team events. We've had to pivot completely and go into the virtual space. We can still do a lot of that stuff, but it created a whole new world and really getting to grips with this whole technology. And so everyone on my team has had to really embrace, okay, there's what we used to do in terms of the outcomes, that's staying the same. But what we're now doing in terms of how we deliver the outputs to deliver the outcomes, that's a different matter altogether. So it's a big learning curve. But what I've been finding is those who've really taken up the challenge have actually got a huge amount out of it and a real sense of achievement. So I'm seeing that across a lot of organizations. My concern is those who didn't feel able to or weren't supported to move into that space.
Thank you. I think there's a few themes to pick up on in a few moments, John, actually there. But Kelly, the word technology was mentioned, so my head immediately went to Flywire. So similar-ish question to yourself, I guess, when it comes to leading your Flymates, how have you found the last few months and what state are you in now?
Sure. So we started off the year with an acquisition and Series E funding. So we were on the biggest high, expecting, as John said, ours was a lot of face-to-face. We're in 12 different locations, but we still had quite a few remote employees. But even me, my global team is in Romania and Singapore and Boston and Palo Alto. So they're everywhere, and our company worked like that. I think it was a massive change because a lot of our culture was also in our offices. We did a lot of stuff face to face, a lot of training, but we had to adapt very quickly. And I think the one thing we did is we have a COVID executive steering committee that we meet, like it was every day, because first of all it was like, getting people out from the offices, working from home, and every government was very different. So we started this back in December with China, right? And Singapore and our Asia counterparts, and things change every moment. And I think that was a really important thing. But in terms of leadership, it is all about the people. It's never been about productivity. It's never been about looking on the machine to see how much people are working. Like, everything we do is centered around people. I had 5 calls this morning, so I choose random flymates. Our colleagues are called flymates, and I speak to them every day. Like, so one of the big things you need to do as a leader is adapt, have empathy, have vulnerability yourself. So as a leader, we need vulnerability. Like, it's important to talk about what's going on for us because we're struggling too, right? I think John put it right. Like, there is no playbook for this. We don't know what's going to happen. We have no idea what's going to happen in the future. And you've just got to go with the flow and ensure that people feel the connection, that they feel supported. People are working crazy hours. I think one of the most beautiful things that we're seeing change is that even though I don't get to see people, you get to see their homes, you get to see where they live, you get to see their babies that are getting nursed while they're in a meeting, or their dog walking in, or their mother-in-law giving them a drink. It's quite beautiful. And so I feel like people are more forgiving, you know, they're more vulnerable. Like, people, you've got to create an environment where people feel comfortable doing this, and you laugh about it and you joke. And, you know, we have children's story time competitions, and we have kids coming in, and we do boxing classes where we have, you know, partners come in or little kids come in, and I think that is the most important thing, that no matter what you do, you put your people first and you're keeping a pulse on it. Because, you know, I think Harriet said it before, and, you know, I too, like, when this all happened, I was in Boston and I was teary for 2 days. I didn't know where I wanted to live. Should I go back home to Australia? Should I come back to London? Should I go and live in the Bahamas you know, I didn't know. I was actually thinking about all these things, but it made me a bit anxious because I didn't know. And being single and not family, like, everyone's got their own situation. Some people are struggling with homeschooling, some people are struggling with living alone, some people are a single parent, and you've got to, I think the whole thing that I've learned is everyone is an individual, everyone needs different individual working styles, and we need to support them in any way we can, because there is a lot of mental health issues that I'm seeing in the organization, and hence we've created a wellness program around that, because everyone is different, you know, and making sure that there is enough support. But you don't know what's happening unless you have people that are trying to find out the pulse and checking in. Like, a lot of my conversations, a lot of stuff comes up for people. So you need someone in your organization that's really checking the pulse on your people and knowing what's actually happening and calling that out and making sure that they're getting supported.
Wow, what an answer. I mean, there's so much in there. I'm going to try and pick out 3 things. The first is actually the human connection and having conversations and listening. So number 1, everyone on the call, by the way, we've got a real mix of people. So we've got some people from companies of 100, some people from companies of 10,000 plus. We've got different industries, FMCG, law, tech, obviously from you guys, but also other areas too. So guys, I asked the question at the beginning, how are you feeling? If you want to put in the chat, just 1 word, 2 words on how you're feeling, that'd be nice to get a gauge on, because I'm really conscious of having a panel that you just sit and watch, which is not what this is about. We want this to be really relevant. And that's, I think, where we can go into sections 2 and 3. So point 2 is that there is no playbook for what's going on at the moment. And step 3 was actually, okay, how do we make one? How do we inject certainty? And I feel like potentially there's some fertile ground in leading by example, but also putting your own oxygen mask on first. And Kelly, I loved how you added some specific examples and practical things we can do there. So those few things, guys, if you're posting in the chat on that human connection point, maybe we can just explore this idea that there isn't a playbook right now, but we really want to create one. John, if I could kick off with yourself on that idea, because you were the person who mentioned certainty to kick off. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so the key thing to appreciate is that there's going to be lots of anxieties around change, and this has been a monumental change. And the problem about this change is we don't know what the end looks like. So lots of people can come to terms with something if they can recognize it as, okay, I know other people who've been through this, and that's what it looks like when it's finished. We don't have that. So that's going to create, as we know, anxiety and vulnerabilities. And Kelly, you mentioned that word, which is so, so important. So it's about recognizing people are in these places. And that's why this whole human connection piece is so, so important. And it's about leaders really reaching out and having a good understanding of where their people are. And the problem we've got with this virtual world is a lot of which I've been hearing with some companies is a lot of the work is transactional. So in the past, you turn up at a meeting in an office and there'd be the chit chat beforehand. But a lot of the meetings at the moment now online it's gone straight into the transactional, and people are missing out on this chit chat, which is actually revealing who people are. Kelly, I really love that idea of actually just reaching out and having chats with your flymates. And that's what leaders really need to be doing, get a good feeling of the pulse about what's happening for their people. So that's probably the key thing that I'm noticing at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. That's perfect. And then Harriet, you mentioned pulse surveys before, so I'm wondering how you're using that listening.
Yeah, so we've been sending out pulse surveys once a week with different themes. So we've been looking at sort of back in the office, are people comfortable coming back to the office? What are their anxieties around that? We've done a theme about learning and development as well. What are you missing out on now? Are you missing out on that learning through osmosis that you have in the office that it's so crucial to people, especially in the industry that we're in and with our trainees. And then we've also done one that was wellbeing themed as well. So it just allowed us to reach out to the people and find out what are they missing, what are they getting a lot of, what do they need more of, what have we not thought of yet. It's this whole idea of this is unprecedented and we don't know what the answer is yet. So, and the only way you're going to find out is to ask, and that's what we've been doing. And I think that's something that's that this COVID crisis has really enabled people to do. It's given permission for leaders to say to their staff, I don't know what to do, what do you want me to do? And I think it's become a huge building block, and I hope that we don't lose that when this moves on. I hope that people aren't afraid to ask, what do you need more of, how can we help you, and then actually look into providing that, because you know, wellbeing is such a diverse topic, and no one knows all the answers, no matter how much you attend panels and you research and you think you might know what people want. Actually, it can be completely different because you don't understand everyone's individual situation. So I think just asking people and having leaders that are vulnerable enough to say, what do you need from us, what do you think we need to know, so we can plan accordingly.
Yeah, I love that. It's the idea that assumptions can actually be really dangerous. I'm doing a session later on with Discovery Channel, and one of the big themes that came out for them was around assumptions, and this idea that culture and well-being in this moment in time is actually an opportunity to shape a culture is really interesting. Because one thing we hinted at last time was that the worst thing that could happen now is this all gets forgotten. Like, well-being right now has been spoken about so much, like we've got 100 people on this for a reason, but what if no action is taken off the back of it 6 months down the line? So Kelly, I'm interested in coming to you now on this culture. How at Flywire are you shaping a culture, and what does that look like? How does it work? How are you putting that blueprint in place? Oh. Can we hear you, Kelly?
Yeah, I needed to unmute.
There you go.
So in terms of, we've got a wellbeing committee, and it's, you know, I'm like the sponsor, and I help support, you know, and come up with ideas. And we started it prior to COVID, right? And then really have pushed a lot through this year. I think it's really important that it's not always HR driven. That's my biggest thing, or people and culture as we are. And I think in my 20 years plus in people and culture, I've always found champions and business people that want this. So it's not like a led thing, like it has to be led by our flymates and employees, because they've got to want this, right? And they go, you know, we've got someone from Singapore, and we've got someone from Australia, and we've got someone from Israel, and there's people from all over, every levels, every department's driving it. And what we clearly did first was we articulated 4 levels of our wellbeing pillars, which was mental health, social, the physical side, so that's exercise and nutrition, and then the financial side, because some people are struggling with different things, and then looking at our priorities based on what our people are telling us and what they want, or based on my conversation. So we've had workshops on you know, the whole COVID related in general, and then anxiety, we've got one, and then the anxiety, we've got executives on the executive team talked about their own anxiety. And so again, that vulnerability, courage, and then it was such a magical workshop because people started talking about themselves. And so we realized that we're not alone in this, right? So then there's the depression. We got a lot of requests from insomnia. You know, Harriet said that you couldn't sleep. There is a lot of people that can't sleep. even now, like I want to do a session on domestic violence, because I think domestic violence is growing. You know, not a lot of people talk about it, but it is really important, and it's not about themselves as much as also how do I support people, or what are the signs, because as John said, you're not seeing people face to face, so you're just hearing stuff. So we did stuff on that. We do stuff on nutrition. We do our boxing, as I said. We've got yoga. So we do a whole lot on yoga, and then we're doing social. So how do we support parents that are homeschooling? How do we support, you know, there was a lot of people that are single and live alone that were really struggling at the start. And they said, we're always the forgotten ones because, you know, we're not got families and that. And I think me being, you know, living alone and being single too, it was very easy to identify with that group that sometimes gets forgotten. So you've got to, and then you've got to look at all the different, the different locations and the different cultures, and there's different things. Like if I'm always getting Western speakers, my Asian population are like, we want people that look like us and sound like us too. So there's a whole, and then the Black Lives Matter stuff came in, and what happened with George Floyd and everything there, and then COVID related racism with Asia. So we almost tie that wellness into the different stuff happening in our world in terms of, you know, the social stuff, and look at those and have workshops on that, because, you know, a lot of people suffered because of those incidents too. So things change all the time, and you've got to be used to that. And then we recognize that actually men may have come to our workshops, but they weren't talking up yet. I know that they're dealing with the same type of anxiety and depression. So what we did is, we're having a males only workshop, and I've got an executive to sponsor it, and will talk himself about what he's struggling with at the moment. His mum's not well, there's other stuff happening, and then he will leave that, and other people will join. So, you know, it's very strategic in how we do things. And then there's a whole social elements, like we have scavenger hunts, we have quizzes, you know, we have drink nights, and as I said, we're trying to do physical get-togethers where we can too, or little groups can go out. So there's so many different aspects to everything that we're doing to drive our culture.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Because there's so much you can do, and almost with the plethora of options as a leader, and many people on this call actually are leading wellbeing, or at least in the team of champions pushing the wellbeing agenda. Like, I'm interested in the simple things you can do to start, and maybe it's starting small. And John, maybe I'll come to you first on this one, because we've spoken before about what it is to set a vision and what it is to discuss the vision and get input on what that looks like. And I think that's a theme that's come out of the conversation so far. So what I'd like to do now, if possible, is almost like define what it means to be a leader when it comes to employee wellbeing, and then play that through into what we can do about it. So yeah, John, if you'd be happy to elaborate a bit on what does it mean to be a leader when it comes to employee wellbeing right now, if we want to shape the culture, if we want to make sure everyone's included, that type of thing.
Yeah, so if I start off just quickly, for me, a leader, there's lots written about it, so rather than get into definitions, but for me, a leader, it's really clear. It's about setting the direction and engaging and encouraging people to go there, as opposed to management, which is turn it into workable plans and make that happen. So the bit about a leader is actually, look, if you've got no direction, or you're not clear about the direction, you're going to have a real problem about your business going where it needs to go. We know that. But the problem then is you're going to have a culture which could mean all sorts of things to different people, and then be a cultural problem for everybody. And Kelly, you identifying it with particularly the cross-cultural piece. So for me as a leader, it's the first bit is about actually really being clear and aware about what your culture really is. I'm not talking about the culture that is written up on the wall. I'm talking about the real experience of people on a day-to-day basis. You're going to have some people in your organization who are doing very well, they're thriving, but others behind the scenes are surviving. And if we don't know what's actually happening in the experience of our people, we've got a big problem. So the first thing is being really, really clear about what your culture really is, and then mapping it against, well, what culture do we really want? So that leads next to intent. We need to be really clear about where we want to go with this. Then you're going to look at the various choices that you might take on board about things you can do to shift from where you are to where you want to get to. Then you've got another problem, which is you've got capability. You have some people have a stronger capability for doing this shift than other people. And there's three things in the L&D space I always focus on. You've got to have the right positive attitude, you've got the right skill set, and you've got the right knowledge set. The next bit is actually galvanizing people to have a commitment to want to go there. Because if you are shifting the culture, there are going to be some people recognizing, hold on, I'm going to be a loser in this shift, and I may not want that. So you need to have a real strong commitment, and that actually starts for me at the top of the organization with visible leadership. And then you need to have action, do something to actually make this happen, because people will be looking at you. One of the things for me about leadership is about role modeling. You are role modeling 24/7. The question is it the right role model for your culture? Because people will act on their experience of you, what you do, not what you say. So if you've got an organization which has got some fantastic stuff written up on the wall, but people's experience is something very different, they will act out on that difference. So hopefully that just encapsulates it quite quickly. But to me, that's how you're going to really shape this culture. You've got to know what it is to start with. You've got to know what you want it to be. And then you've got to work your way through those 6 steps. And that will get you a good culture.
I love that. I think that's a framework that people can latch onto, and hopefully people have got a pen and pad to write that down. But I think it's starting with a vision and then creating a culture and role modeling as well. Harriet, I saw you nodding a few times there. I know that Bristow's has got quite a unique culture in the legal industry as well. No billable hours and a bunch of other stuff. But in particular, as it relates to well-being, I'm really interested if you had any thoughts off the back of what John said. And we're about halfway, guys, by the way. So I'm going to look at the chat in a second. If you've got any questions that you want to throw to the panel, please do. I think, George, I'll come to you first, if that's okay. But yeah, questions into the chat. Harriet, back over to you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything that John's saying. And I am very fortunate in the firm that I work for at Bristow's has got a very people-centric culture. And like you mentioned, they don't have billable targets to create this collaborative environment. We really have a focus on work-life balance. So we are lucky that we have that culture in place, but that doesn't mean that our work in terms of well-being is done. And certainly as it's changing, this has changed the scope of well-being in general as well. And one of the things I've really noticed in the shift recently is just the permission to talk about these ups and downs that are happening during COVID-19. I think it's something that I really hope continues after lockdown and after we've all moved on and gone back to normal life, as it were. You know, I've heard a lot of the term being bandied around, the Corona coaster, and people will be saying to their employees now, you know, how are you on the Corona coaster today? Are you an up or on a down? Rate your well-being from 1 to 10. And they're just giving these people the permission to openly admit that there are ups and downs. But that shouldn't stop after coronavirus, because actually life has ups and downs. And I think I'm being asked by senior members of my team and across the firm, you know, how really are you doing? And I think, have I been asked that before so openly and honestly? And actually, how helpful would that have been to me in previous times before lockdown, where I was struggling, to have someone say, are you on an up or a down at the moment in life? Because, you know, as we've been mentioning before, all these issues that are existing now in lockdown, they may be magnified now, but they existed before and they will exist afterwards. You know, childcare issues, worries, anxiety, mental health issues, they all will carry on existing. So I just think it's been this huge shift in culture and actually asking people and being vulnerable, as I know both John and Kelly have mentioned, just having that vulnerability from leadership and that permission to talk about it in the workplace. And honestly, that has just been just amazing for me. And it's something that I've been pushing for anyway. I want to talk about mental health in the workplace. I want people to be open. It shouldn't be a taboo subject, but this has just really almost opened the floodgates for it. You know, we want to hear how you're doing. We expect you to be up and down. And I just really hope that culture change maintains after this.
I love that. I think we'll come on to that last point on what happens after this, Harriet. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing how you're feeling, by the way. We've got positive and engaged, feeling energetic, well-balanced, optimistic, match fit, quite a nice one. Busy but energized, feeling good. So actually, I'm thinking, by the way, I know we've got ups and downs, but if we were looking at this in the first forum or the second forum, those answers are incredibly different. So thank you very much, everyone, for being open and honest and sharing that stuff. George, if you'd be happy sharing your questions to the panel, and then Azana, you've written something quite nice in the chat as well, so I'll come to you after that. But George, if you're there.
Sure, thank
over
you.
to you.
Can you hear me?
Just about.
Just about. So thank you very much to the panel. It's really interesting conversations. My question is, obviously in this uncertain landscape in which which is the center of all conversations, what role, if any, do you see data playing in the pursuit of a positive culture of well-being?
Interesting question. I've got thoughts on that as well. I'm wondering, Harriet, you've just contributed very kindly. Kelly, could I put you in the hot seat on this one?
Sure. So I think data is a very important thing because you've got to get the pulse on people. So as you said, like I can have conversations, but we also do pulse surveys too. So I think Chris said it too, like, so we're not just driving initiatives that we think people want. You've got to understand how people are feeling and what they want. So there's twofold. It's like, hey, data is very important to understand where people are, where they're feeling. Like we could have a pulse or a gut instinct, but we've got 500 employees scattered around the world. So data is very important for everything that we drive. So to get a pulse on how people are feeling, but also what initiatives are we going to drive? Because as we said, like, hey, I might do boxing, but actually our boxing numbers have dwindled down, or we did this, we could be doing something on insomnia, but if people don't really, if people are sleeping well, there's no point in doing insomnia workshops. So you've got to work out what people want and help drive it. And I think data plays a very important part in that in terms of everything that we do in people, culture and the business, but definitely in driving initiatives. Like I've always been like, don't create initiatives just for the sake of a tick the box exercise. Make sure that they're meaningful and making sure that we're doing what people want and that we're ascertaining, from a pulse survey and engagement survey, how people are feeling at the moment. And our strategy coming out of that comes from the data we receive.
Thanks, Kelly. How about yourself, Harriet?
Oh, George? Did that answer, George? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Harriet, if you had anything as well on that one, or John, if you want to jump in, please do.
So I've got a couple of thoughts. I love the question, George. Really, really important. The edge I would add to this, though, is there is a difference between data and information. And the concern I've got is that we can reach out and we get some data coming in, which is only as good as the person is willing to share.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So if we're in a culture where the person feels vulnerable, they may want to provide answers which are the right answers for their career. At the moment, a lot of people are going to be facing, there's distinct possibilities of downsizing a lot of organizations at the moment. And there's going to be some people who will not want to be truthful because it could jeopardize their career moving forward. So we need to be clear, what's the real data? What does it tell us as information? And then the other thing I want to just highlight is, whenever we go and ask people for something, we're raising expectations. The issue now is, are you as a company committed to delivering on some expectations? If you're asking for their opinions on certain things, they're going to be expecting things to happen as a result of it. So there's just two things. One, be clear about, is it real information? And the second one is, you're raising expectations, be clear about how you're going to answer those.
Yeah. And I wanted to add one more thing too, just going on from John, is the data you get today is very different than when we get next week. When we did a poll of people that want to come back to the office, our data told us very differently than the people that have booked seats in the office. Like I think 60% said they want to go back. We're getting 5 people at a time in every office. And I think in an ever-changing environment where emotions are changing, people's well-being and states are changing, expectations and different things are changing too. But John makes a good point. And yeah, when you raise expectations, you follow up. And if you don't follow up, you've lost all that trust. So if you can't follow up or you can't deliver on what was asked, then you have to have a very good reason why not, and transparency in this time and always though is key to all this, to building trust. But what we're seeing at Flywire, people are being more demanding and asking more explicit questions than I've ever seen before because of all the change. Like but they want to do it anonymously. Like the questions we get at our all company are, I've never seen anything like it. People are very direct. They want to know stuff and they don't want us to, BS them, right?
Mm-hmm. Harriet, I'm interested in your thoughts on this as well. And then Azana, I'll come over to you.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Kelly and John have both made really great points here, but I think another point to add about data as well is there's a lot of things you can do to support your cause for wellbeing as well. When you look at sort of hard data such as sickness absences and productivity, and any data you can use on that are so helpful to prove that wellbeing is a worthwhile investment. It's not necessarily all about return on investment, it's about the value of your investment as well, and what does that mean for your employees. And really you can prove the link between a good wellbeing structure and a good culture and productivity and lower sickness absence and claims on personal on private medical insurance and things like that. So I mean, not only are you creating this amazing worthwhile culture, but if you are just looking at the hard data as well, it is also saving your company money. So I mean, it truly is a win-win situation when you're looking at it that, and it can, that sort of the data and metrics behind it can really help drive a cause forward. And especially, you know, you'd like to think that everyone would supply endless budget and ideas for wellbeing, but that's not always the case when you're in a business. You know, I've worked in law firms and accountancy firms, and that data really helped. If I could put the hard figures in front of people, that always helped with the cause that I'm driving forward. So
perfect segue into the next question. It resonates a lot with our experience with Discovery Channel as well. So we tracked questions, George, such as, I feel energized at work. I feel like Discovery Channel value my health and wellbeing. And when you go back at the end of a 3-month program and tell the head of diversity, inclusion and wellbeing that they saw an 80% increase in the value of how much Discovery value their health and wellbeing, like the question isn't, oh my God, should we do this or not? It's like, what can we do next? So I think if you're talking about senior leadership, there were some stats out from PwC the other day that 90% of CEOs are investing in wellbeing initiatives at the moment. And I think at the moment it's a lot around because it's the right thing to do. But we all know that leaderships and boards think in pounds and pence. So I think it's an essential piece of the puzzle. My hope would be that everyone understands that wellbeing is important now. My pessimistic side says we're still going to need to make the business case in a few years. And if you measure stuff now and compare it in a year's time and 2 years' time, that's going to be the thing that really drives change. And the companies that do that, I think, will do really well, and the culture will be spot on and the leadership will be believed in. I think the companies that don't, it might accelerate what was already going to happen in terms of downward trajectory. So I think, Azana, this might be a good time to bring you in, because your question was around culture, budgets, people-centric view, etc. So over to you if you're happy sharing.
Definitely. I'm writing my final report for my MSc on employee well-being. So for that, I've been interviewing a lot of people over the last few weeks, a lot of kind of HR heads, CPOs, a few CAOs, etc. And what I've generally found, and something that Harriet just touched upon, which I think is something that I've been hearing a lot, is there's clearly this benefit of employee well-being, but you don't get endless budget, and at some point you do have to come in and kind of justify that with like bottom line impact or hard facts that you can present to the CEO or to the board in order to basically get them to sign off on well-being initiatives. And one of the reasons why that I thought Kelly's people-centric philosophy was really interesting is because I feel like even though you hear this so much from all these leaders, they're almost kind of derailed when it comes to dealing with the financial constraints of the business and being able to provide those employee well-being initiatives that you want to really put in. So I just thought, how do you deal with that? What are some of the ways that you go around it? Kelly mentioned, some of the free things that they do, and listening. I'd be really, happy to hear about that as well.
So I think I'm in a very, very fortunate position. I have a CEO that drives the P&C agenda as much as me. So there is no question over budget. There is no question about what I want to do. And I've never had that ever. And I feel very fortunate. It's probably one of the first times in my life that I have a CEO like that. And it's the reason I love Flywire, and I've been here for so long. And a whole executive team are like that, right? So we do, our boxing sessions are like 40 to 50 pounds, and as many people can join, and the same as our yoga sessions, right? we've got speakers that were, you know, that I know that, you know, similar to me, I do a lot of speaking engagements for them and they help. At the moment, I've got a whole lot of coaching that's free for a lot of people that I know are struggling. So I've got 7 people getting coached. So I think it's through my networks too. And then just really, and not everything is so cheap or free, but again, look for people in your organizations that are fitness. Like, you know, one of our executives owns his own CrossFit gym. So he's going to do gym sessions. I'll do stuff. So every time, even before this, when I used to go to Spain, there was someone that did fitness on his side. The whole, like, we had 50 people in the park every night, every time that I went to Spain and visit the office. Twice people would just come into the park and we'd do stuff together. So sometimes they don't even have to be professionals. It's just getting out. Like, how about people that like running and want to do a running club? So again, looking at people that can do stuff in terms of fitness. Same as nutrition. Like, you know, I went to a retreat a year and a half ago, and you know, I have someone doing nutrition talks, and he's got his own retreat and does stuff for a lot of famous people now, and he does talks for me because I went to his retreat. So they're different things, and I think sometimes it's network, and then you've got to see the creativity you've got in the room. When we did anxiety, I think it was great having the session, but the magic happened when the 3 executives on our team talked about their own anxiety, and we opened up a discussion around that ourselves. So again, look for what you've got in your organization and the connections you've got. Like, I have someone, our VP of engineering, his wife is a yoga teacher, so she's happy to do stuff for us. And then you can, the social aspects, like, you know, I run stuff for some of the social aspects. So we, you know, so depends what elements you look at. Of course, you've got to bring in professionals, but you look through your networks, you look what skills you have in your organization, and there is a lot. But as I said, I'm in a very fortunate position that I have a CEO that doesn't even question my budget on this, because he knows the importance of the people and the well-being. And he loves that I have a pulse on it. Like, even me, like, I studied psychology, like I can do counseling, of course, but again, you know, sometimes people just want to talk about stuff, and I end up, and then we've got EAP, so I'm always like, okay, you need to go to EAP. I encourage you to do that. So making sure, so we didn't have to do EAP for everyone because it was in people's private health insurance. So again, I was going to go pay for EAP, but then I looked at every insurance across the world and it was already included. So you've just got to look at stuff and work out, again, prioritize what is important and go from there. Did that answer?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I'm happy
sure,
to,
yeah,
I mean, connect with me on LinkedIn and we can talk, and I can help you with anything you need.
For sure, that'd be great.
I saw you smiling during that,
so
Harriet,
much.
as well. I think maybe Casey's doing a few things at Bristow's as well. So I suppose, I guess, taking a step back, thanks, Kelly. There are so many specific things in there as well. Sarah, you had a question, I think, so I'll come to you in a second if you'd like to voice that. My brain is now thinking, okay, we've had a framework. It's a high level, step by step from John. We've got some specific stuff from Harriet and Kelly, and I wonder if I'm listening in and I am leading the charge on wellbeing, or at least could lead the charge on wellbeing, I'm thinking about, like, what do I do now? Like, what tangible steps, like what one positive action can I take to improve things? So I'm just going to plant that seed now. But Sarah, I wonder if I could come to you about your question, because I think it will resonate with a lot of other people.
Is that me?
Yeah, that's you, Sarah Fernley.
Just in case, Sarah. Yeah, so I look after a small team of very strong, independent women, and what you were saying, John, actually about direction is actually been quite helpful, because we've been having an office refurb while nobody was in the office, and we're due to go back in the next few weeks. So when you were talking about direction, I've been sort of trying to understand that for a long time, but we won't know what that direction will be. We don't know what the demand for the support will be for our team. So on top of going back into an office when people have been at home, who knows what sort of demand will be required from us. There's going to be potentially a very different next few weeks coming up, or lots of rapid changes. And I have already checked in a few times with the team just to see how they're dealing with things at home. But I don't want to irritate anybody or add unnecessary stress by continually asking those same questions. And it was just about, how do I monitor, or any suggestions for just keeping an eye on people, and how do we manage what could be a very rapid change in people's feelings, or you know, what can we do to try and keep people sort of upbeat and happy.
Thanks, Sarah. John, Harriet, interested in both of your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, so for me, if you build that culture so that they expect to have conversations around and at a nice light touch level about how you're getting on this week, what are your challenges this week, how can I or other people support you with those, then it's almost like you're talking about the business stuff, but at the same time, you're picking up the words they say around those challenges. So for instance, if I'm picking up saying, look, somebody says, I don't know where to start, I feel so overwhelmed with the work at the moment, that's giving me a cue now and a lead in to actually just say, look, okay, so tell me a little bit more about that. How can I help you? So I think it's probably a little bit of the light touch. The second thing I'd highlight is everyone has a normal behavior. So if you're attuned to, is this person acting differently to how I've experienced them? That may give you a little bit of an insight into, okay, something's different now. I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but there's something's different. The other part of it is that you've got people who have different connections in the organization. So it's not just picking up from one person, it's about themselves. It's actually about picking up a sense in the organization about how do others feel that the well-being is. So they may not be talking to you about personal relationships, but they'll give you a bit of an insight, actually, this area of the business, there's something going on. So that's probably the lightest touch. Just on the other thing where there's going to be some stuff coming up over the horizon, which you've said is going to be fairly imminent. The piece about direction, if I can't give clarity around, look, this is where we're going, I can't tell you what it's going to be like in 4 weeks' time, let alone 6 months' time. But what I can assure you is I will do everything to support everybody. These are the things that we will put in place to make sure everyone feels supported. So that's the certainty that you can provide people, even if you don't know what's going to happen over the horizon. Okay, hopefully that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, John. Harriet, I'll bounce to you in a second if that's all right. We're just reframing. So we spoke about a few things before. One was that this idea of listening and having our say is really important. 2, that there is no playbook, and 3, that we're trying to inject certainty. And it strikes me now as leaders and the questions that are coming up, that's where we're at now. It's about what can we do right now and what can we do to inject certainty. So in terms of looking forward, Harriet, we'll kick off with yourself. What reasons do we have to feel positive? What reasons do we think, yeah, we've got the leadership, we can create this culture of well-being in the future? Harriet, what do you think? Related to Bristow's or just in general?
I think, I mean, similarly to what I was saying earlier, this has opened the doors to give us the language and the permission to talk about well-being more openly, which is amazing. So that's the first step, is already ticked off, really. But I think as well, it's just this focus on well-being has meant that we're giving people the tools and the support that they need to manage their own well-being moving forward, because there's an element of the stuff that comes from the top down, like these initiatives that you're running, these things that cost the budget, these things that we're organizing, but then there's where the employees have to reach up and meet you in the middle as well. And this in that step is very much just it's the signposting steps, it's the making sure people are aware what is already available to them, giving them the resources and things that they need to manage their own well-being moving forward. And I think that's one thing that's really positive that's coming out of this, is that we've got a plethora of information out there, and people really can look into their own well-being and monitor how they're feeling. And hopefully we've then given them the tools to, when they are dipping a bit lower in resilience, that they know where to go and where to find these things and who to ask for help as well. And I think that's something that is just a huge positive that's come out of this.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. How about yourself, Kelly, at Flywire?
So I think, yeah, I'm positive too. I think we're seeing, as Harriet says, a lot more vulnerability and courage and people speaking about it. But I think what I've also seen is a huge degree of resilience, right? Like this is some of the toughest times that people have ever experienced. And I think there's a lot of resilience. People have had to be more agile. They've got to change their plans. Like we've all had plans and everything has been changed. And so we're just constantly evolving into something different. As we said, you know, as John said, it's not the new norm, it's the norm, but that can constantly evolve. And I think as a tech company, we're constantly changing, we're constantly evolving. That means some people may not want to be with us, because I think people are reassessing their lives too. I think that's one thing we're seeing. People are reassessing what's important to them, where they want to live, where they want to work from, what's the work they want to do, who they want to be connected with. And I think it's okay. So I think people are probably being a bit more true to themselves and a bit more authentic in some ways. And I feel that there's a great deal of support and love and care for people too, and empathy. I think one of the biggest thing is empathy for every single person's situation.
Love that. I actually had one of the questions that came in, but they're not on the call today, was around how to lead with empathy. So definitely on the radar. John, last word to yourself, if you would like to.
Yeah, I'm quite struck that COVID-19, I'm going to put it in the same category as World War I and World War II, in that those moments in history affected the whole world and created such a massive social change as a result of those wars. We're going through exactly the same. The expectations are shifted considerably. I love what's been picked up already about people have been, yes, they've been resilient, but they've now recognized that they're more resilient than they ever thought possible. They're wanting something different out of their workplace experience. They will remember how they were treated from their organizations, and they will make choices in the future based on how they've been treated in the past. So I think we're at a watershed. Whether it'll stay the same in terms of the amount of conversations around wellbeing at the moment, whether it'll shrink back more into, okay, we've got to hit the bottom line. But I think we've definitely moved the dial considerably from where it was 6 months ago.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. Guys, thanks for putting the questions in the chat as well. Really hope it was useful. We'll send the recording through afterwards because there was quite a lot in there. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Marina, if you want to wrap up, I would just close by saying thank you for joining. We at Innerfit, we really believe about it's amazing to bring people together for a session, but if we don't do anything differently, then it's been a massive waste of time. So the invitation to everyone on this call would be to take one positive action, whatever you want that to be. That's the invitation. So in terms of what next, that's part of the puzzle. Marina, I'll hand over to you if you want to jump in now around polling.
Yes, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Marina, I work for Innerfit as well. So as you can see, we are a employee wellbeing service provider. We really look forward to building very strong and long-term partnerships with our clients and providing them with services around well-being. So we deliver workshops, one-on-ones, consulting and classes around nutrition, mindset, mental health, and movement. So please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, to Chris, or to my colleague Adam for any inquiries about any of these services. We have tailored sessions, and we would love to work with you if all this resonated with you.
And there we are. In all our glory, that's us, the core team anyway, and a lot more experts behind the scenes. And that's what we've got coming up next. So we'll send the link out afterwards. We've got some amazing panelists coming up next time as well. So thank you so much to you guys today. Harriet, John, Kelly, it's been a pleasure. Thank you everyone for joining, and hopefully see you next month.